done. And it reminded me of like when my brother and I would go to your classes that you would teach growing up and how fun that was. And you'd paint us for like 3 hours and we took all kinds of breaks. And people loved it. There wasn't really anybody
and you guys
grumpy
did a good
with
job.
us. I know, it was a really fun experience. And they either paid us in cash or in ice cream.
Yeah.
And that was super fun. Well, guys, my dad's been a professional landscape painter for a long time.
Long time.
And he's probably going on his 4th decade of being a landscape painter. He's probably proud that I've developed a love for painting, but I've taken more to faces, figures, portraits. And I know when I bring my questions to him, he's got to switch gears and it probably wears him out. And I know he's got to transition from landscapes, trees, rivers, to skin tones, planes of the head, and dust off the old practice days of the human figure. But he does both really, really well.
You can reduce everything, whether it's a head, tree, mountain, to 3 values, at least to start with. It makes it a lot easier to block it in.
So today, my dad and I are going to paint my daughter, who's 10. Her name is Adley. She is really good at art in general right now. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, she does a great job of drawing. Yeah. Very, very interested.
Yeah, she loves drawing with my dad. She loves to pull me aside and draw with me. She shows me about 50 paintings or sketches a day. She has a really good time. And we sat her down and we painted her. Took a good photograph of her. I actually sat and tried to paint her from life. And that was kind of tough. I scratched that one and took a good photo. But her like squirming and asking for a lot of breaks, all of that, she was an eager model at first, but then she was pretty ready to be done. And it reminded me of like when my brother and I would go to your classes that you would teach growing up and how fun that was. And you'd paint us for like 3 hours and we took all kinds of breaks. And people loved it. There wasn't really anybody grumpy with us. I know, it was a really fun experience. And they either paid us in cash or in ice cream.
Yeah.
And that was super fun.
Yeah, it was a good, it's always good to paint from life. And one advantage of painting from life, when the model can sit still long enough, is that it does help you to simplify. With a photograph, we tend to tighten up and become too detail-oriented. But when someone's sitting there and you know you have a limited amount of time, you paint just what's important. And kids did that really well growing up. They would pose and they knew to sit and not move. And I think they did a good job. So if you paid them well enough, they would do anything. So.
I did pay my kid. Yeah, she had a good time.
In art school, we learned to paint from the figure. We oil paint, some people used acrylic or pastel, but we would draw the figure in the morning, charcoal, and then in the afternoon for 3 hours, we would paint the figure. And that was painting class. Then weekends or later afternoon after school, we had landscape assignments. But a lot of similarities in that you're trying to simplify your subject to 3 values, and you're trying to find the shadow pattern either in a landscape or a portrait. And this thing back here helps. We had to draw this plane cast a lot because our head or a mountain or a tree, everything is made up of planes. As the form turns, the value changes, and the plane cast was really good. Whether you're doing landscape or figure, plane cast is really good in understanding form.
So Dad and I did the same painting. Let's watch the demonstration and then we can talk about our process afterwards. this is my painting. I started with a burnt sienna ultramarine blue wash drawing. And then I blocked in all the dark pattern that I could see and wiped away a bunch of stuff on her face to make room for my lights. And then came in with the mid-tone. What I really wanted to focus on this time was looking back and forth enough times that I'm really thinking about proportions. I think that was my struggle in my last sketch. And so I looked just back and forth between my photo and my painting hundreds of times. And it really did help me see my proportion struggles as I was painting. And I would say it helped me actually the most with, because my daughter's face is turned and it's not looking head on. And it helped me as I looked back and forth between the photo and the painting. Am I making my features look head on, or am I keeping everything turned in the same direction? And I would catch myself often, my eyes would kind of be melting forward, or my nose or my mouth. And so everything was helping me look back and forth to keep everything going in the same direction. But overall, it was a really good exercise for thinking through proportions and really slowing myself down in the process of getting the 3 values and taking as much time as I could before I went into any detail.
All right, now mine, this is the second try. And again, I used a photograph. I didn't paint for the model, and I struggled more, I think, because of that. I tend to simplify better with a model. I started the same way with a burnt sienna wash drawing, a little bit of blue in it just to knock down the harshness of the burnt sienna. And I went for the shadow pattern, kept everything very simple. Force all the flesh into either the shadow or the light, no in between. And that really helps get the proportions right because you're simplifying and you're just seeing 2 values. Then go back with a 3rd value in between the dark and the light, or where the form really starts to turn, you get a middle value in there. And then within the shadow, 1 darker value for an accent, and in the lights, 1 lighter value for the highlights. Then at the end, I tend to focus more on edges where I want to lose. I tried to lose an edge there, and I banged up her forehead pretty good. But softer edges where the form's starting to turn, sharper edges where portions of the nose, the eyes, mouth are kind of coming forward a little bit, and that creates some depth on the face.
So when you see mine compared to yours, what do you think I can grow in the next time?
Well, I know we're really focusing on value and drawing here, brushwork. But I would say color-wise, focus it on maybe cooling the shadows just a little bit more. They're a little bit hot, kind of a little too much burnt sienna. And then edges, which we kind of talked about just a second ago a little bit. All the edges inside the shadow are always going to gradually kind of disappear, either be really, really soft or just non-existent. Like the edge of the lips in the shadow really shouldn't be an edge there, but between the darker lip and the light, there's going to be a sharper edge.
Yeah.
So edges and a little more on temperature as far as the shadows go.
Okay. Well, let's have my dad look at this painting. He's going to help me with painting in that reflected light, kind of go over how to do that, maybe what colors to pull to make it look not like the wrong flesh tone, and see if it just helps me for my next painting.
All right. Now what we want to do, you got nice shadow in there, a nice light shapes, shadow pattern, some halftone in there. And for values, that works real good, but you need some shape or form within the shadow. I mean, you have to start like this, flat, but then there's some reflected light bouncing back into her face. And that's where you show some modeling within the shadow. And the neck is a little darker than the cheek. So we probably don't have to go darker for the neck, but reflected light on the cheek there. So I'm going to get alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna. Now I don't want anything as light as the halftones or the lights in the light area, because then we'll lose our light source, because everything will have the same lights in it. So I have to get this dark enough,
Okay.
but a little bit lighter. That's too dark. And I can come back and adjust the color after I get the value in there. So I'm going to get this. It's the lightest reflection there. And I'm cooling down the shadows just a little bit from what you had. And it's a little warmer again up underneath there and darker.
Yeah, this is helpful because I keep seeing like, yeah, the neck shadow is always darker, but what is it that I need to do differently? So yeah, this is making a lot of sense.
And the mistake is going too dark, because the photograph generally gets way too dark in there. But just having a simple plan for the color, whether you're matching or even if you don't like the color, you know, get the value right, and you can always come back and adjust it. Yeah, I see the halftone here,
Mm-hmm.
and then the light here. It kind of blends. It can kind of blend over the halftone a little bit.
Okay.
Because it's usually the light going over the dark slightly. It's not really the dark coming over the light, because the light is hitting here, and it's gradually getting darker and darker until shadow. So think of the light overlapping the dark as opposed to dark overlapping the light.
Okay. Do you generally do the keystone like a midtone?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I've been doing.
You know, depending on where the light is, it could be different, but generally it is a little bit darker there. Gotcha. Then as that carries around on the forehead, just because the forehead was a little hot.
Yeah.
And that's a little yellow, but I'm going to adjust it. Still a little yellow.
When you think foreheads and around below the mouth, does it still, even if they're a younger kid, do you still cool it off below the mouth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
didn't do that because I was curious, like, is it different for kids?
Yeah, you can have, for the most part, and you can, I don't see it on this photograph of Annalie, but you can have your strongest color in the halftone on the fleshy part of the cheeks, because that's where there's more blood.
Yeah.
In the cheeks in there, and so you got that pretty good. Just trying to get them a little redder, and on the nose, which you got pretty good, and right in here on this halftone. And you can lay those values in real sharp edged.
Yeah.
You know, light, halftone, dark, highlight, halftone, light, highlight. Just lay them in there without worrying about edges. Then when all the form is there, you can come in and push and pull the edges a little bit. So I think if you think through that, getting those 3 to 4 big simple values and get them just blocked in without thinking about brushwork or perfect color, just the value and the planes, I think the rest of it comes a lot easier.
Cool. Thanks, Dad.
Yep.
Well, if you want to see how I'm learning these things to get better at painting, how to apply form and all the values, whether it's a landscape or a head of a portrait, like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye-bye. Hey,
Dad. I'm looking forward to every video we do. You go. Okay, let's try again.
I'm ready.